All right, welcome to another Sunday Conversation presented by FingerLakes1.com. I'm Josh Durso, and this week we caught up with Casey McDonald. He's a Seneca County resident and has started a little initiative called Life of the Party. We talked about it and how he hopes to address voter participation, the political process, and of course some of the pitfalls associated with political committees and how they function within small rural districts like those here in the Finger Lakes. It's a conversation you definitely don't want to miss, and it's one you're only going to get right here on FingerLakes1.com, so stay tuned for that. And remember, download the FingerLakes1.com app for the latest breaking news alerts around the clock right on your smartphone. All right, Casey, thanks for being here. Obviously, a lot to talk about. You're shaking some stuff up right now, and it is very, very interesting to watch play out. Before we get into Life of the Party and what you're doing there, tell us a little bit about yourself and what maybe sparked this interest that you have now.
Well, it's kind of interesting. People ask me, when did I become involved in politics? I said, well, when I got my first paycheck and I saw how involved politics was with me, I went, gee, maybe I should pay them a little attention. But I've been doing things for many, many years. In New York City, we had a situation where the school board of New York basically crammed a curriculum down our throats without due process, and I complained about it. It was called the Children of the Rainbow Curriculum, and it dealt with coloring books for preschoolers that basically promoted a gay lifestyle. Well, kind of controversial back in 1992. So that got my attention, and we did what we needed to do. Of course, unfortunately, many times when you raise your voice, government, which should behave like a dog, it should sit, okay? It should stay. It should fetch. It should do things nice for us. But sometimes in the hands of wrong people, it growls, it bites. So in that particular situation, Child Protective Services was called against us, and they wanted to break our door down over a complaint that one of our kids had a dirty t-shirt. So I thought that wasn't very cool, and was able to slow up the process sufficiently to get a buddy over there with a video camera. And bottom line is, it ended up at the US Supreme Court, okay? So the fight and the ability to fight is something that I'm not afraid to do. I'm not afraid to take it to the next level. I have a situation now at the Geneva City Court, and my joke is they don't find me attractive, but they find me appealing. So I have a good faith in what the Constitution is about. And when it comes to representational government, which is what our topic of the day is, Life of the Party, it's about the power of John Q. Public. It's about the power of the ordinary person to basically know what's going on. And if something bad is going on, get good information and take good action. So good people getting good information, taking good action for good government. And it's something that I did years ago. In 2007, we had the Elect Respect activity, which basically was discovering that in the Republican Party in my own backyard, Seneca County, which I had just moved to a few years prior, I became aware that there was one person who was abusing proxy. Proxy is giving your voting power away to someone else. And he, in essence, was operating as a one-man quorum, where he had enough proxy in his pocket, he really didn't have to have discussions. So what I ended up doing is, rather than be accusatory and shoot from the hip, I contacted 63 counties across the state to find out what the voting records were of the current Republican committees. It turned out that Seneca County had a 16% voter turnout amongst the committee members. These are the guys that are supposed to be the cheerleaders of democracy. So I made a fuss about it. I wrote a book called Life of the Party. I produced a TV show that broadcast on community access, and through the help of my darling deceased brother, Peter, we did a campaign in 27 election districts where we ran 54 candidates. And it was a lot of fun and very necessary. And the revitalization of that party, the Republican Party in Seneca County 2007, was fantastic. I guess I'm kind of like a locust, you know, I have my different battles, and they usually come to me. So the battle that's coming to me now is related to that thing that we did in 2007, related to committee integrity. And I helped a gentleman work on his campaign, congressional campaign, one cycle ago. And his opponent was part of this group called Problem Solvers. And it turns out that my congressman was the head of that group. So it made me curious as to what's going on. And when I did my research, I was absolutely appalled that a guy that I know and like and respect, a man that I've seen in the room with 100 shouting liberal voices, come back with decency, patience, integrity, that his voting record was outrageous, and that he was recruiting the swing vote in the 115th Congress, which was a majority of Republican representatives. So you ask a simple question, and you get me started. So you have to ask yourself when you want to interject, because basically, you know, I could just let you know what the whole story is.
Well, so you've sort of brought us up to date,
Okay.
so to speak. I'm pretty interested in what the sort of catalyst was, or what it has been in the last, say, 6 months to a year, when it clicked in your mind that this was really, you were going to hit the ground and you were going to run with this specific life of the party effort. What was that like? And then I want to get into what sort of some of the goals of life of the party is or will be over the next several months.
Very good. Well, as I said, our congressman had this problem solvers group. And as I was doing some opposition research on a candidate for my client, I did some additional research on my own congressman. Now, in D.C., there is an impeachment process for congresspeople. You can do it through the House, through some, terrible actions, or through the electorate, where you can try to change a congressman's mind or his occupation. So I came across this information very, very late in the previous election cycle. It seemed irresponsible to me to gather signatures and primary our current Republican congressman without having a sufficient game plan to be successful. If I couldn't be successful, I would probably give a lot of weapons to the opposing party in the general election and tick off enough of the Republican base that we might have lost a seat. And I don't think that that's a responsible way to go about things. I think we should discuss things in the family, We have a district that is 17% gerrymandered to the advantage of the Republican Party. So the problem is that it's considered rude to primary an incumbent on any level. On the committee level, which is the smallest role possible, some committee seats can be won with a single signature on a petition. But it's still considered rude to ask someone to defend their record. And I don't think it should be. I think it should be a culture of open primaries so that we can have a nice airing out of issues. In this case, a congressional issue, which again, 700,000 people, 11 counties, it's a big deal. How do you raise issues that are relevant and that have resonance sufficiently to effectively primary a massively funded, well-connected, extremely well-liked for many reasons, and profoundly experienced politician. And those answers will come down the road. But to answer your question, why the timing? And for the last 6 months, it's because in the absence of active political committees, there's no way anyone's going to compete with the kinds of ads and the kinds of contact that a well-financed campaign has with a casual political audience, a secular American audience. Let me explain. Think about a secular Jew. He wears a yarmulke, hey, when somebody dies, when somebody gets married. A secular Catholic, they go to church, Christmas, Easter, right? A secular American is someone that goes to the voting booth, pulls a lever, and goes, I did my part. But it's such a tiny part. It's not anywhere near the amount of attention that the government's taking out of our paycheck, the 10%, 15%. It's not that it needs to be that. But if it was 2 hours a month, an hour a month of truly focused activity, it could change the dynamic of politics in the 23rd and hopefully then throughout the country. Because what we have in D.C. is a big, big problem, that it costs millions of dollars to get a $170,000 a year job. Our congressman's spending north of $3 million every cycle, 20 times his paycheck, and that money's got to come from somewhere. So when we start to pick it apart and go, okay, where's that money coming from? What are the compromises made to make that happen? Then we realize that we have a dog out of control, okay? Not serving us, but not on a leash at all, and basically serving re-election. So to answer a big problem like that, and there's many little problems along the way, hey, the incinerator legislation that came out yesterday, how fantastic is that? Kind of a regional issue, not necessarily national in its flavor. However, there are many, many battles that politics addresses. And none of those battles are more important than these few weeks. What began in the end of February ends the first week of April. And it's the petition season. And it's the one time of year where the whole political system should be on its toes, should be a little bit afraid. There's a little gray area between the times when signatures can be circulated and the times where they must be filed. That is the highest worry point of any elected official. They don't know if they're going to be primaried. They don't know if they're going to be challenged. Well, know that I'm doing the best that I can to do what I can in Seneca County, but also eventually start influencing the other 11 counties of the 23rd Congressional District, because I do believe that we're getting a very bad deal, and I would like to help our congressman change his mind or change his job.
Right. So to that end, we see it every day whenever there's a political story that's posted, it gets to Facebook, and all of a sudden the comments turn into a messy pool of just disastrous everything. And the overall tone seems to be despondent, just not interested. How do you go about, now you're talking about sort of changing it from being that despondent to being more engaged, and how do we get around this? Do we have to engage a very small percentage first and then let that catch afterward, or is it a matter where you literally have to get in contact with as many people as you possibly can, and that's what Life of the Party is trying to do, to wake up the masses, so to speak, even though Seneca County isn't exactly the mass?
Well, it's interesting what the guy from Galilee did with 12 supporters. He kind of got a message out that had some endurance, also had persecution, and it's a part of it. We have to expect something that I call the curse of constituency. If we choose to run for a committee seat, right? I mean, 800 feet this way, 1,200 feet that way, 3 blocks that way, and we go against an incumbent, we might face some ridicule. Somebody might say, and I like to joke about it, oh, that guy eats his steak with a spoon, or any fill in the blanks, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter, okay? We're going to get some ridicule. So then, up it to the next level, right? A township office. Well, I don't like him because I saw him yell at his dog once, or whatever, right? And now we have all the way to the White House, well, gee, he paid $130,000 to this girl, and we have this accusations without any sort of substantiation as to conspiracies and this type of stuff. So it's part of the program. On Facebook, and I invite anybody out there, hey, visit me, say hi, look at my posts. I mean, I'm across the board. I mean, I'm a jazz musician. I have a lot of fun. I've done stand-up comedy. Years ago, my mom, may she rest in peace, asked me to take a college course with her, and I said, sure, Mom, whatever. It was stand-up comedy, okay? And she and I toured together. It was a ball, okay? We had a lot of fun. So I love cooking. There's a lot of things I like doing. But when we get to politics, ultimately we have to recognize that people are not just saying things to make you angry. They're not just trolling you, for the most part. And to flush that out is a kind of an art. They have genuine concerns, okay? So the way that I address it is not through the reading of newspapers. I address it by direct source information as much as possible. I email back and forth the New York State Board of Elections, in this case. Just now I got the New York State Committee bylaws, which are not available online. Hello, for the Republican Party, okay?
It's only 2019.
It's only 2019, and in order to get it, you actually have to break the veil of anonymity. And if you break the veil of anonymity, you can suffer persecution, because that dog, at the end of the leash of a politician that trains it to growl and to bite, dare we mention our governor, whom I love, thank you for the incinerator effort, I appreciate it. But as Attorney General, what did he do? He used that dog to attack people that stood in his way of the governorship. He attacked Patterson. He attacked Client 9. Now, attacking Trump with the same dog. It's as if government that's supposed to serve all of us actually serves a few on occasion to, in essence, put opposition in its place. So when we recognize those things and we start to have a conversation, we need to recognize there's going to be name calling, okay? One of my wonderful philosophies is what other people think of me is none of my business, okay? So I've been called many, many names, okay? And that's okay. I think that our current congressman is quite excellent at absorbing the name calling. If we ever go to a public meeting of his and you see the people screaming at him, again, he does a superb job. What I do is I'm disarming in the details that I have, and we come up to a point where the controversy is really fairly minimal, Well, how many jobs did Trump create, and is he really the greatest in all this? And you get into it, and those percentages are maybe much smaller than we care to admit. How much good did Obama do? What do the numbers say? Can we live with the numbers? Can we trust the federal government to even give us numbers, okay? So they say that all politics is local, and of course that's not true. But the politics that is most local is when I decide to have a name associated with my registration, a party brand. Blank means I don't get to play in the primaries, okay? Independent, you go to the DMV and you register independent. What's your registration? I'm independent. You get enrolled in the Independence Party, which actually makes up a fair amount, thousands upon thousands of registrants, as does blank, okay? Then you get to the kind of more traditional, my father was, therefore I am, I've been a Republican. And then there's people that are Democrats and their children are Democrats, and on and on. And that is cool, but again, it's not a deliberate thing. And then you get into these tiny parties, working families, conservative, green, libertarian, right? These are people that actually, most likely in adulthood, changed the name of their party to reflect what they think their philosophy is, in the hope that their party is watching out for their understanding of what the party should mean. What does conservative mean? You know, one of my definitions, well, you have fiscal conservative and you have social conservative. So fiscal conservative is spending tax dollars as if they were earned dollars. Instead of spending $48 a gallon for ethanol fuel, spend for ethanol the same thing you would spend for an oil product. Mm-hmm. And again, sometimes this legislation makes its way to Congress, and then we watch how people vote. So a conservative concept is to say, hey, we can have anything we like if we can afford it. We can't borrow from 2-3 generations down the road and expect to have success, okay? And of course, there's exceptions to all of that. But, so here's the problem. We have major parties and minor parties that all operate under the New York State election law. And during these few couple of weeks is really the only time where we get to evaluate if these parties are in fact representational of our ideals. So part of my advocacy is to say to the Republicans, whom I love and whom I am constantly critical of, because I think we have to take care of our own backyard before we start complaining about our neighbor's backyard. And that is, we have so many thousands upon thousands, 7,042 active Republican voters in Seneca County, and yet the bylaws of the Republican Committee, which consists of 54 people, right, is they allow proxy voting. Now, they allow it with some limitations, but if you take a legalistic approach to the actual language of the bylaws, those limitations result in what has been a problem in many parties. One person can represent the entire committee. And it's never supposed to be that way. It's supposed to be a deliberative body where somebody knocks on the neighbors' doors of 50 of their neighbors, talks to 100 people, the other person in their committee does the same thing, and we listen to them. Okay, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, maybe longer, maybe less. What's on their mind? Oh, I don't think this, I don't think that. Great. I'll bring your concerns to the committee, and we'll discuss it. And when we see candidates come forward, we'll evaluate those candidates as to which is best for our constituents, the people that live within my election district. Okay? So that's the way it's supposed to work, and it doesn't work that way. It is completely corrupted in its bylaws. So there are certain things you can foil, okay? They're not readily available on any website, and it's a shame. The bylaws of the committees are foilable, okay? And the committee list is foilable. Who are the members of the committee is foilable. The voting record, you have freedom of information, you can get that. I know how often you voted. I know what party you're from. Congratulations and thank you for voting as often as you do. So what I've done is I contacted New York State and got all the certified bylaws of every political committee in 11 counties. It's just an email. Just what I said to you is what I said to them. And the head of information over there put it together. It was a big effort. 37 currently certified bylaws are filed with the New York State Board of Elections. Now, what's interesting is they're supposed to be filed every 2 years, meaning that, again, life of the party, it tells the story, it kind of gives you a little bit of time, right? You might miss a game show by reading the website. But when you do, you can understand a little bit of how the system works. And it's dysfunctional, terribly, grossly dysfunctional. So you're supposed to certify every 2 years. Yates County Democratic Committee hasn't certified since 1958, a little more than 2 years ago, okay? The Republican Committee of Seneca County hasn't filed since 2005. Again, not every 2 years. What's interesting is that these minor parties file all the time because they don't want to be challenged by the election law that says if you don't file, guess what? Anything you do doesn't matter. They want to have control of the general election menu. What's on the ballot, okay? So if your name appears on the ballot and you're right there with the Republican, for whatever the role happens to be, if it's also listed with the Conservative Party, it gives the impression to the voter who votes Republican, oh, I see that the Conservatives like this guy also. So without any research of you whatsoever, the secular American, right,
The assumption is made.
walks into the building for 6 minutes, throws his finger or her finger and votes, or now we have the ballots, and votes for the person who appears to have the endorsement of like-minded people. And the whole thing is a scam and a sham. So,
Okay. I'm genuinely curious because you talking about this sort of reminded me of something that I was thinking about this past election cycle.
yeah.
How many people do you think actually understand and mentally account for the brand that the party they're affiliated with actually represents? Or do they know, do most people, do you think, actually know what, if they're a registered Republican as an example, do they know what being a Republican is? Do they know what being a Democrat is? Do they know what being a conservative is? I've discussed it with different people at different times, and honestly, sometimes it feels like there isn't that knowledge base. And I genuinely wonder if that's part of the problem where you have folks who are sort of blindly moving forward, entrenched within a party or okay with a particular party that they're affiliated with, without actually knowing what that is supposed to be or what that party is even supposed to be. They sort of taking a step back further from what you're talking about, where you have folks who are entrenched and looking out for their own interests. When you have a constituency that's lost sight of what the goals of the party are supposed to be, how can they, or how can that group effectively challenge what that select group who has power is doing on a daily basis?
Again, the petition season is a season when those people in power should be trembling.
Mm-hmm.
They should be trembling because, and they don't. They don't because we're lazy, all right? I'm going to miss a game show. I'm going to miss, something fun. And we have good lives. We have a lot of fun. So to answer the question, what does my party stand for, I think is irrelevant. The platforms of a party should be developed by a discussion of neighbor to neighbor, and those concerns, which might be very temporal, are brought forward to a committee that then does one thing. It makes a recommendation. It makes an endorsement to the community at large. Many times that endorsement is in name only and does not carry with it any sort of shoe leather effort, okay? So politics is a shoe leather game. Nothing is going to defeat neighbors talking to neighbors, sharing good information, and asking for very specific, efficient action, okay? So if everyone stands on one side of the boat's going to lean this way and the sail can go that way and you go faster. That's good. It's simple to do. Everybody gets over there and the boat goes faster. Oh, wait, time to move to the other side of the boat. So it's not as if the activities are difficult to do. They're very simple. But ultimately, we are electing individuals and not platforms, okay? So the individual can have a multitude of different perspectives, and the committee then is supposed to evaluate the individual to the point where they can make a recommendation. My suggestion would be that the bylaws of all committees should say that that recommendation should be of a supermajority, not of a simple majority, not 51%, but 66, 67%. And otherwise, just leave it to the voters at large. Why give one person an advantage over another when the race could be extremely close? Give that advantage and allow the committee then the ability to support either candidate and let the chips fall where they may. When one candidate is substantially better than another, then let the committee make that recommendation on a supermajority. So the things that we can control are not necessarily the platform, what it means to be a Democrat, what it means to be a Republican, conservative, etc., but the bylaws, okay? The bylaws should eliminate proxy voting. One individual who says, wow, I'm 1 in 100, right? I'm 1 in 700, and I want to represent you. Well, great. Do you have 2 hours a month to do that? Yeah, good. Then you don't need a proxy, do you? Okay? Because every now and then you're going to go to a 2-hour, 3-hour meeting, a 7-hour meeting sometimes if people want to be difficult to weed out the old folks who showed up to make quorum happen and then need to go to bed because it's 11:30 at night, 1:30 in the morning. If we wait till this group of people gets tired enough, then we can get this job done at 3 a.m., okay? The manipulation of meetings is, another big piece of the puzzle. But what happens is we have an election by petition for our committees rather than a process where people meet their neighbors and talk to them. So I draft my own legal documents. I feel pretty comfortable with law. I feel that if something says something, that I should understand it kind of clearly. If I need to, I can go to a law library and research holdings on minutia, little parts of the law that might be subject to interpretation. But generally, I feel pretty comfortable with the law. So I can go to someone and say, hey, would you sign my petition for this candidate or that candidate or myself? If you sign the petition, we can have an open primary and have open discussion. Okay? So fast forward a year from now, and again, and hopefully this presentation of ours will get the attention of our congressman, and hopefully he can have a conversation with me. It'd be wonderful if it was on camera. It'd be wonderful if he can tell me what the advantage is to our 23rd district and to our country for him to recruit a swing vote of Republicans, 24, the dirty 24, I call them, who made the Republican majority irrelevant during the previous Congress, the 115th Congress. Maybe he can explain to me why that's a good thing. Maybe we're reaping benefits from it now that the Democrats are in charge. Maybe the Democrats are jumping ship, and there might be some evidence to that effect. Okay? But let's have the conversation. Treat us like adults. Don't say, oh, Pelosi and Cuomo, and then you're the first one in line to say, I'll endorse Pelosi for Speaker of the House as a Republican, as part of this Problem Solvers Caucus. So the issue is we need to understand the committee process, because through the committee, all dialogue flows. If we're using a designating petition to come up on the ballot, we don't even have to meet our neighbors. Get 3, 4, 5, 8 signatures, you're on the committee. So, Josh, do you know the name of your committee members? And you're in the media. Just a simple question. If the answer is no, that's fine.
And so, to that end, typically, when this is a media critique, frankly, one of the things that we end up talking about a lot, vacancies. When there are vacancies, that's when there is discussion. Now, I will say this, in the last 4 years, there have been plenty more vacancies on these town and county committees than there ever have been before, in my opinion, at least historically.
All right.
And I think that is because of a lot of the things that we're talking about now. But if you're talking about the average consumer of politics, or sort of the day-to-day person who doesn't really care who their town committee people are, the answer is a resounding no. Thankfully, this is one of those scenarios where I think a conversation like this can help.
Here's the issue. When I go door to door, I ask for signatures so that we can have an open primary. Mm-hmm. In my case, I'm running for a Republican committee seat in Seneca Falls. I don't live in Seneca Falls. The bylaws say that you can run for any district as long as you live within the county. Some bylaws might say, well, you have to be a part of the same assembly district. Some, only 2 out of the 37 bylaws that I reviewed, say, no, you must live within the election district. And I think that that's preferred. Every time I go to knock on someone's door in the 1st district of Seneca Falls, and again, I used to own the Seneca Falls Hospital, which is part of that 1st district, I ask, after I gain all signatures, can we put a yard sign in for the candidate I'm supporting, in this case, Chris Folk? And next, on a scale of 1 to 10, how interested are you in politics? They say 2. I say, well, thank you very much for your signature. Have a great day. They say 5. I said, great. Can I have your phone number? They say 7. I said, great. Can I see you on Thursday? And I recruit. We need to recruit all the time. What happens is, if there's a vacancy, many times there's a grooming of the replacement. Who's the person most like-minded? Oh, wait a minute, works for me, is beholden to me, whose thumb I have on their pulse, whom I can trust, right? You look at these 501c3s that are supposed to have a board, right? Oh, his mother's on it, his brother's on it, right? This kind of thing. Same thing in politics, okay? So we have a very savvy gentleman. I'll say his name, Angelo Bianchi. I love the guy. I think I met him once. Corrupt in many ways, in that he manipulates the process to control these political parties, okay? He controlled the Republican Party. Is he controlling it now? I don't know. The committee seems to vote. It seems to be well populated. Republicans seem to get out there and vote. However, when we look at the minor parties, the Conservative Party in particular, just today, are we ready to drop the bomb?
Sure.
Here it is. I analyzed the committee, the Conservative Party committee. I've also analyzed the Independence Party and the Republican Party. I haven't touched the Democrats yet. I don't have the time just yet. However, I did look at their bylaws, and they weren't scanned properly. Okay, Ted Young? They weren't scanned properly. So when you send bylaws to the state, review it so that we can actually see what your policies are on quorum, proxy, etc. Right now, it's not possible. Okay? So anyway, update your bylaws is my suggestion. In reviewing the Republican committee, I see that there's problems with proxy, there's problems with quorum. Quorum is 25% based on weighted vote, okay? So that means you take all the Republicans in the county, you divide it by election district, and then you ask yourself the question, proxy. The Seneca County Republican Committee allows proxy to the town, the head of the town committee. So in Seneca County, in Seneca Falls, that would be Tina Lotz, who's our current county clerk. There are 8 districts within Seneca Falls, literally making up pretty darn close, arguably close, to 25% of the voters of the county. That means all those individuals can proxy to one person, and one person can run the committee. I'm against that. I don't think that's cool. I don't think it's representational. I don't think it's American. But the only time to complain about it is during these couple of weeks, during the signature gathering process, the designating petition process. And we have to eliminate just a small piece of our secular Americanism to embrace that concept so that we understand the power of the designating petition process. So, I analyzed the bylaws of the Conservative Party for Seneca County, and their proxy is unlimited. Plus, you can live anywhere and represent any part. Their notion of quorum is 25%, but here's where it becomes a little bit arguable. If the bylaws do not specify 25% of the potential number of committee members is one thing. 25% of the actual number of committee members is another. So talk about vacancies. 32 vacancies out of 54 seats on the Conservative Party, okay? The things that I say can be subpoenaed because that's how I talk. Refuted. I'm not giving you an opinion. I'm giving you a fact. And that is how I can talk to a Democrat or somebody, even a Republican or anybody. These are facts, okay? So we don't have to get emotional about it. It's the reality. There's 32 vacancies. Whoops. There's 34 vacancies on the Conservative Party committee because a little bit of a lead up, okay? I analyzed the voting patterns of the members of the Conservative Party committee. Out of the 22 that was given to me by the Seneca County Board of Elections, 10 are active voters. The rest didn't vote last year, okay? 8 never voted. One of them is registered to the Republican Party. One of them is not even registered to any party. But nobody cares. Nobody's watching, all right? I am. Because it's fun, because it's, no, it's important. When I go and vote in November, and I think like every other good-minded voter, and I see someone's name associated with conservative, and I go, wow, they've got the Conservative Party endorsement. No, the Conservative Party in Seneca County is a bogus circus, okay? And if you're registered to this Conservative Party in Seneca County, please go to my website, good time to put it in front of here, lifeoftheparty.us, and say hi to me, okay? I've identified a number of couples that I'm recruiting to serve on the Conservative Party committee. I'm also actively seeking the resignation of current members of the committee. And in my pocket, I have the resignation of 2 of them. It's just a start. It's a hobby. I have a full-time job. Yesterday I was in overalls changing out a mixer in one of my tenants' apartments, okay? I have things to do to make a living. At the same time, this is important, and we can't be casual about it. It is disgusting to visit people who have been so bamboozled by Angelo Bianchi. I'll say the name, because it's a fact, it's a record. On my website is the transcript from the Working Families court case last year. In there, if you read it, it is so desperately sad, and these are not my words. These are the words of the transcription of the proceedings, okay? Words which I verified yesterday by visiting these naive people who didn't even know that they were on the committee. Do you have time to be on the committee? No, my husband has stage 4 cancer. I'm so sorry. Nice people. People that would never say it's time for you to go when you visit, okay? And these are the people that are manipulated. So the problem is that the system allows for this manipulation, and no one really is keeping track to make sure that laws are followed. We did have a case during the last DA's race where Barry Porsche insisted that the laws be followed and filed suit against the Working Families Party. And hopefully we can have more of that chutzpah, courage, in this election cycle. And I would encourage Chris to file suit against these minor parties to flush out the fraud in them. My approach is different. My approach is to identify people that vote, who are part of the Conservative Party, and to encourage them to become committee members, to change the bylaws, and to get, Again, I say I admire Mr. Bianchi because he taught me parts of the election law, because you see what he's doing, you go, okay, how is that at all justified? He's a Republican. But he has the elite power that is accessible to all of us who have a sufficient ethics, mental capacity, and desire to do the magic 3 words that amplifies our political power 1,000-fold. Become a notary. You become a notary, and you can gather signatures anywhere in the state for any party at all. Okay? So Miss Ocasio-Cortez, right down in Brooklyn, I could help her or her opponent gather petitions. I could help the Republicans, I could help the Democrats, because I am a notary. Okay? So notaries are very, very powerful, a very, very powerful component of this. It gives me the power. Why just let Angelo go visit people from other parties and then fill a committee with straw men? I visited a friend of mine I went to high school with, a guy that dated my sister. And I went and spoke to him and his wife, and they have signed up to become committee people to start filling some of those 32 vacancies, 34 vacancies, because of the letter I have in my pocket, the letter of resignation from the committee members that were bamboozled. Okay? So, yes, great time of year to do it. Does it come at a cost? I don't know. I bought the hospital. I learned how to get the furnace fixed, how to pass code, how to do everything, but I didn't learn about the political part. And all of a sudden, a law that's on the books was brought, dust off the shelf, and they went after me. And they said, the law was that you can't get a permit if you owe back taxes. Well, I bought the building with $250,000 in back taxes that were owed, okay? To get a $50 permit, it would only cost me $250,050, okay? And I made the argument and spoke with the town supervisors and said, look, this is unconstitutional. You know, safety and tax collection are 2 separate issues. They shouldn't be married. And eventually they agreed with me. But first they took me to court 7 times. Now, I didn't ask for the battle, but they brought it. And through a tremendous amount of work, a decent understanding of law, a decent and fair judge, I prevailed. And that was some of the backdrop that led to the changing of the law. Long story short, anytime we start to upset the apple cart, some people who hold the leash of government might say to it, growl, might say to it, attack, might say to it, bite. And we need to ask ourselves if we want to share what our founding fathers shared, which was a bit of persecution. So I've done it many times. It's not that I welcome it, not, but it happens. And when it happens, Shakespeare said, right, beware of entrance into a quarrel, but being in it, bear it, so the opposed may beware of you, okay? So when a battle comes to me and to anyone else who decides to do something for the right thing, right? The Murphy's Law, right? I did it for the right thing, yeah. Right? You should expect a degree of persecution, And again, we have scriptures that say, hey, you must be doing something right if you're being persecuted, okay? So back to one of your original questions. How do you talk politics? Well, politics and religion, right, are the 2 things you're not supposed to talk about. But death and taxes is what I talk about all the time, right? How can you avoid taxes? How can you avoid death? There are answers to both questions. One is religious. The other is political. The other is legal. We have a president who says, hey, I'm smart, I don't pay taxes. I don't pay federal income tax. Paid $430,000 in real estate taxes, but I don't pay federal income tax. How's that possible? Well, I can explain it, but that's not the battle at hand. The battle at hand is, to understand that local government, the bylaws, which can be foiled, we have access to that. We don't know how they vote. We don't know how many people use proxy. We don't know the subjects that they're voting about, except that we do see endorsements come out of these parties, all right? But it's a private club. You're not allowed entrance unless you have the pass being that you're elected to the committee or invited, okay? So the issue is, when a vacancy, we must always presume vacancy. How long should someone serve on a committee? If they're going to visit their neighbors and knock on doors and say, Josh, what's your interest in politics after I get your signatures? Scale of 1 to 10, you say 7. Great, join me Thursday. And all of a sudden you're joining me, and I pass the baton on to you. And I take care of other things. It shouldn't be this control. It should be a cheerleader, an encourager, right? Leaven, right? To create more of yourself and your passions. Frankly, we have a lot of the same passions, whether we've had a conversation or not. Transparency is something that anyone from any party can say, give me more of, okay? So the bottom line is, though, that we have the government that we tolerate. And for me, my level of toleration has gone down a bit, where I've realized that my congressman is a reflection of my ethics and my values. If I don't do all I can to change his mind or change his job, it's my fault that Trump's presidency is frustrated. Because I believe that Tom Reed was a major source of frustration to Donald Trump's inertia through the problems solvers. Now, Tom, I'm going to throw this one out there. He calls himself bipartisan. I call him bipartisan, but I spell it differently than he does. I don't spell it B-I, partisan. I spell it B-U-Y, meaning it takes money to run for Congress under the current culture. And it's that culture that must be changed in order to change D.C. and, frankly, in order to change the 23rd representation. The culture of neighbors talking to neighbors. Good people getting good information, taking good action for good government, can defeat any amount of advertising dollars. So I understand his motives for doing what he's doing, but it frustrates me and it doesn't reflect me. And to that end, I want to frustrate his PR, right? And hopefully get enough people, frankly, if it's 1 in 1,000, 600, 700 people, an effective campaign can be launched against any incumbent in Congress. 600 people getting 50 households apiece is well sufficient to put a very serious dent in a lopsided race where someone has 3 million and someone else has 3,000.
So obviously we've covered quite a bit of ground, and this is really deep stuff. What is that 30-second, and this is where I want to end it, what is that 30-second elevator pitch for somebody who might be on the fence? They might be close to sort of getting on board and saying, "This, you're right, this needs to happen, change needs to happen." What's that 30-second pitch you make to sort of get them over the fence, or sort of to quell some of those worries or those concerns that might pop up?
Well, again, good people, and we all consider ourselves good people, and why not? Getting good information to take good action for good government, okay? So good action is very simple, where you knock on doors and get a few signatures. Good information is direct from the horse's mouth. Don't take it from a news agency, Rush Limbaugh or CNN or Fox or anyone else. Trust, but verify, okay? And if we want good government, we need to make the investment of looking into things. There's a burden that comes with information. A friend of mine just went to the doctors and learned they had skin cancer. Before they had skin cancer, there was no worries. Now they got skin cancer. A whole nother set of worries, okay? So I'll leave everyone with this. Verify the things I'm saying, okay? I am critical of our current congressman, but I'm not running against him. That's not today's battle. Today's battle is the political committees, to populate them with people who actually vote, with people who actually care about the issues, who don't mind talking to their neighbors, and bringing those concerns to the county-wide committees, regardless of party. And in the Republican committee, which I am running for a seat and hopefully will be successful, unless I find a replacement by knocking on doors and finding someone who lives within the 1st District of Seneca Falls. Anyone out there who is interested in running, let me know. I will gladly take a step backwards. However, the bylaws must be changed. The brand of a party with thousands of members must not use proxy. Must have quorum standards that are 50% of the possible seats. Out of 7,000, can we fill 54 seats? Yes. Out of those 54 seats, can half of them show up to a meeting? Can 27 show up? Yes. Then commit that to the bylaws. So the simple 30-second pitch is, don't be a secular American. Learn what's going on and learn what simple things you can do to make a world of difference and revitalize the life of the party.
Appreciate it. Appreciate the time, Casey.
Thanks,
for
Josh. I
coming in.
appreciate it too.
Hey, guys, thanks for listening to today's show. New episodes every Sunday right here on fingerlakes1.com. And, of course, the podcast is available wherever you consume your podcasts and on a lot of streaming services. So check that out today and look for a new episode next week right here on fingerlakes1.com.